Everyone, welcome to this screencast. I am Chandan and today we are going to discuss about simulating a router using Linux namespaces. To start with, we'll create two different LAN segments and then connect these two LAN segments using a L3 router. We will also create two nodes using namespaces and connect them to this LAN segment so that we can simulate a traffic flow from one namespace to the other one. So let's get started by creating two namespaces to act as the nodes. So this is the first namespace. We're going to create namespace 2. So at this point, I would like to point out that if you haven't seen my previous video about working with namespaces, you can have a look at the video. We have the description in the uh, link below. So now that we have the two nodes created, let's create the router's namespace. We'll call it router 1. Let's now create the links between the router and the two namespaces, and these links will act as the L2 segments. So as you can see, we have created the first V-th pair. We have two parts of this V-th pair, or the two endpoints. One is going to be connected to the namespace, the other is going to be connected to the router. Let's create the second pair. Okay, so now that we have both the V-th pairs ready, let's now attach them to the respective namespaces. We'll now attach the second pair. Let's now connect the other end to the router namespace. And the second pair. Sorry. Okay. So now we have the two LAN segments which are now connected to one central routing namespace. Let's now configure all the namespaces. We'll start a shell into each of the namespace and configure the IP address. As we can see, there are two interfaces. We'll follow the same thing on the second node. and here we are going to use a second subnet of 2.2.2. Let's now go to the router namespace. If I do ifconfig -a, we'll see three interfaces. We'll configure each of them. And this will be so at this point I should be able to ping both the nodes from the router. Okay, and let's try the second node. So from the router I am able to ping both the nodes. Let's see if the router has IP forwarding enabled. And yes, it has. Now the next step would be to configure the default route on each of the namespaces. We'll start with namespace 1. As you can see, this node only knows about the directly connected network. So we need to make sure that any other network that we try to reach should go to the default route. So let's start by adding a default route. Okay, and at this point I should be able to ping the 2.2.2 interface on the router. We will still not be able to reach the 2.2.2 node on the other side of the router because the other node does not have a return path. Let's try the ping. And sure enough, but if we try to ping the node on the other subnet, will not have the reply back because the other node does not know how to return the packet back. We'll resolve this by setting the default route on the second namespace. So here similarly we will set the default route. As you can see, the default route is now set, and if I go back to the previous example and now try to ping the end node, it pings because now we have the full connectivity from node to node. Okay, so we have seen that namespaces can be used to simulate a simple router which can connect two different LAN segments. That's all I wanted to present in this recording. Catch you next time.